Hello, am I audible? Excuse me. Okay, thank you. So, it's been a long time, and I feel so happy to see all of you here. Hello, teachers, respected teachers, dear friends, dear little brothers and sisters of Saraswati Vidyalaya. And I'd like to especially thank the school management, Rajmohan sir, especially Kalesh sir, Srilaja ma'am, for having me here, for calling me here so that I could share my views this reading day. So, actually, I should wish you a very, very happy Independence Day today. And you must be wondering, why today is Independence Day? Independence Day is 2 months ahead. It only falls in August. So, why are you wishing us Independence Day today? Actually, Reading Day is yet another Independence Day for all of us. Just imagine how lucky we all are that we are literate, that we can read books. There are many people who yet do not have that sort of, I call it a privilege itself, being able to read, being able to understand it. That's indeed a big privilege that all of us have. And if we don't make use of it, that is a very, very big mistake, a very, very big error that we be committing in our lives. So, as we have got that ability to read, that ability to comprehend things that we read, why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we read? So, I know, I think the age of students here, likely from 7th standard, am I right? We have children here from 7th standard. 7th up till So you're all little children in 7th standard. So if you have not yet started reading, or if you're just wondering, okay, what sort of books should I start with, or what sort of books should I pick up first to start reading? Well, I'll tell you, like, I can only speak with what experience I have in front of me, being because see, reading is a highly personalized choice. Just like your personal interest in clothing, or your personal interest in food, or your personal interest in anything that you do in life, reading similarly is highly personalized. It's personalized in the sense that, see, my interests or my area or the area that I focus on reading might not necessarily be your area of interest in reading. So how can you find out which is your interest in reading? You cannot find out your interest and then go into reading. You have to go into reading if you have to find out your interest. Okay, for example, when I was in 7th standard, like when I think like we have children here from 7th standard, it takes me back to my 7th standard. So let me say what I did in 7th standard. Okay. So when I was in 7th standard, that was the first time that my mother took me to the public library. Those of you who are from Trivandrum, you might know the Trivandrum State Central Library at Palayam. Of course, there are limitations for that. We know we are all caught up at home, and it's been over a year since I have visited library at Palayam. So when I went there as a 7th standard child, 12 years old, when you get into the library, it's just the feel first time when you go into a library, you do not know what are the things there, you do not know what sort of books you have there. It's like a new place, almost like a wonderla experience. It's just like, remember your nursery school days, your nursery class days, like you will have a toy room in the nursery school, and then the teacher comes and opens that toy room, and then you do not know like which toy to pick up, which will be your favorite toy. So what do? You start exploring that toy room, you pick up different toys, you touch the different toys there, and then you find out which is going to be your favorite toy there, and that is how you discover your interest there. Just like a small child goes into the toy room and finds his or her favorite toy, it takes some time to familiarize yourself to explore that entire library. Or even if it's a small shelf of books, it takes some time to explore that shelf of books and discover who is going to be your favorite author, or who is going to be your favorite writer or poet or anything. And see, when you think about reading, it's not only about reading books, it's not only about reading famous authors, it's even about reading the newspapers, it's even about reading the magazines, it's even about reading the small, small articles that come our way. And in this age, we know we all live in the sort of a digital virtual age. Of course, we read every day, don't we? We read even on the screen. We read on our mobile phones, on our laptops, on our Kindle. So it's not only about reading the traditional hardbound books with different pages. It's not only that. It's also so reading, the scope of reading has further expanded. Nowadays, we hear people telling that reading has died, nobody reads, the new generation is not interested in reading. But is it actually like that? I think the scope of reading has only expanded, and in this age, when the scope of reading has further expanded, what we have to do is that we have to make use of those opportunities, or I call it privilege itself, because in this present era, when many people don't have that privilege, shouldn't we make use of that privilege that we have? So, okay, the first time you go into a library, I'll begin with the children's library. So first, I went to the children's library, and that was when I was in seventh standard. Okay, I see a lot of small faces here, and it reminds me of my seventh standard. So just like you all, in seventh standard, when I went there, the first day, of course, I didn't know what to do. Lots of books. It was like a wonder world. I did not know which book to pick up. Where should I start reading? Because I was not, of course, I had read books in school, but the school library was comparatively smaller than this public children's library. And in children's library, you have lots of freedom. You can go to any shelf, you can pick up any book. It's not like the school library where the teacher gives you a book. It's not like that. So once you are let free into that world, what I did was I slowly started reading different authors, beginning from, for small children, I'd say, like you might be familiar with Nancy Drew. So Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys, you've heard of those authors and books and all. Then Enid Blyton's tales are there. So lots of such authors, classics. You've even illustrated classics. For small children, what we prefer is like we'll have rather than reading the unabridged version. It's better if you can read the abridged. That is a very simpler version of classic stories written with illustrations, with pictures, with color, so that it becomes more interesting, because pictures also communicate much rather than reading the original hardcore classic books. So I just went, explored everything there. But almost within a month, I was getting to realize that I have a particular favorite shelf in the library, and then my interest became on to finish almost all the books in that particular shelf. You know, in children's library, you have a shelf for Ruskin Bond, and Ruskin Bond became my favorite childhood author. It's like because there is a saying which says like if you have not yet liked reading, or if you have not yet loved reading, it means you have not yet found your favorite book. It's just like you say, I don't have any friends at school, but till you find your best friend, you might be friendless. But once you find your best friend, then it's forever. So it's like that. If you say that, no, I don't like reading, it means you have not yet found your favorite book. So what you have to do is go find out books and read. Okay. So I found Ruskin Bond to be my favorite author, and then you have to make resolutions. I decided that within the end of this year, I am going to read all the books of Ruskin Bond this children's library can offer. And believe me, there's an entire stack, there's an entire row there's full of Ruskin Bond books. And before I came out of seventh standard, I completed all of those Ruskin Bond books in the library. So that is an accomplishment where you can yourself be confident of yourself. You can say, yeah, I've kept a promise to myself and I've fulfilled that promise. So we all make new year resolutions, right? So one of the best resolutions that you can make for new year, or even vacation resolutions, for example, like you have April May vacations. When you have vacations in April, a very important thing, a very important resolution you can make is, okay, before school reopens, I am going to read 20 books, or even 10 books, or let it be even 5 books. Okay, so when you make that resolution and when you fulfill that resolution, it will help you a long way because you are investing in yourself. This is the best help you can do to yourself. Okay. Then so that is how you find your area of interest or your genre or which author is going to be your favorite. But there's a thing that it's not only about reading one particular author. Okay, you find a particular author very interesting, or you find a particular genre of books very interesting, and then you stick on to that only. It's not like that. Because if you want books to change you, you have to change books. It's not only about reading one genre of books. It's not only about always reading only fantasy books. It's not like that. You have to change books. You have to explore the different readers. See, we have different famous authors. So what do? You have to read at least one work by all the famous authors, and you must have read almost all the major works of your favorite author. So ask yourself, who is going to be my favorite author, and spend your time with that favorite author for quite maybe it will take years to finish reading the works of your favorite author. Okay, then coming to reading newspapers, of course, you should read a newspaper. We all know that reading newspapers are very important, because when you read newspapers, see, maybe immediately it will not show an effect, because immediately you can't pull yourself before the newspaper and just make a decision that I'll finish reading this newspaper today. Maybe might be in the beginning you will be interested only in the sports page or even in the book review or film review columns. Anyway, take the newspaper, which is the page that interests you the most, read it. Gradually, slowly, we'll build it up, we'll expand it, and we'll cover the entire newspaper. So that is a time consuming process. It takes some time. You cannot imagine that tomorrow onwards I'm going to read the entire newspaper. It's not like that. It'll take time, but be patient, go little by little. And like that intelligent, in the intelligent story we have heard of that intelligent tortoise, we'll definitely win the race in the long run. So when you read newspapers, there's nothing wrong in reading. Like people say, you have to read the Hindu, you have to read the English newspaper. Of course, you can read the English newspaper, but I don't think there's anything wrong in reading the Malayalam newspaper as well. So you can read a Malayalam newspaper along with an English newspaper. Just progress gradually. Then you have magazines. You have children's magazine. You've heard of the Tinkle magazine, which is very popular among children. So you can read the Tinkle magazine, and even our own Balarama and Kalikudka, all those things for little children, to bring them into reading. The role that these children's magazines play is not at all little. And then gradually, as you progress, depending on the growth of a small child, a small child, you cannot give huge magazines to the child. You cannot ask him to read the week. He'll just get bored with it. But as the child grows up, you can expand your scope of reading to other materials. You can start reading the week or the India Today, even Madhurabhumi, every Madhurabhumi weekly. So you can gradually expand the scope of your reading. Okay, so imagine you finished reading a book. Just after you finish reading the book, if it's a library, of course, you return it to the library, or else if it's your own personal collection of book, okay, you keep it back in the shelf safe. That's not enough. After you finish reading a book, what do? That is another thing that we have to focus. After you finish reading a book, take a notebook or take a diary and keep a small account, a 1 to 2 page account of that book. What are the important messages that the book has conveyed to you? What did you like in this book? What did you not like in this book? Or what are the striking quotations, thoughts that has inspired you? What are the new words or phrases that you have learned from this book? And see, initially, when you start reading books, it's not necessary that you have to understand each and every word in that book. It's not necessary that you have to understand the meaning of all the words in the book, and then you have to go find the dictionary, then find the meaning. No, just leave it as it is, because a lot of the meaning you can understand from the context itself. From by reading that entire paragraph, you'll be able to grasp the meaning of that particular word which has confused you. So if you find like going to the dictionary every time and then coming back to the book, if you find that quite a little bit difficult, uh, just don't bother about that now, because gradually when you read so much, your vocabulary, your language use, see, the way that you think, your perspectives, the way you perceive things will change. And so that's one thing, that is writing book review. So do not forget to keep aside a notebook or keep aside a diary, and as you progress, as you read each book, make an account in that book. Like I keep a diary for that. This is my second diary. The first diary I filled it with all sorts of book reviews, and now I'm progressing with a second review. Okay, for example, if you make a resolution that this year I'm going to read 50 books, just imagine by the end of that year, the 50 pages of your diary will be full, more than 50 pages actually, because you write two-page reviews, so almost 100 pages. Almost 100 pages will be full of wonderful stuff which is going to help you in future as well. You do not have to go read that book again. Of course, it's preferable if you want to read the book again, you can, but this diary will become a big treasure trove which will help you in future, to help you with all sorts of, let it be essay writing competitions, or even debates, even elocution competitions, or even when anything, even when you meet a person, even when you talk with that person, all these things that you have written down in your diary, that you have written down in this book review book, is going to be a big treasure that's going to help you. Okay, so that is about book reviews. Then, see, we all read textbooks, we all read our school books. So, what I mean by reading is beyond that textbook reading, okay? Because we have enough and more of our school textbooks to read. But when you have some spare time, when you have some leisure time, even weekends or before you go to bed, that is when I read. I read before I go to bed, maybe half an hour, or even some days it goes up to only half an hour when I feel very tired. But if it's weekends, of course, and if you find a very interesting book that you cannot even keep it down till you finish reading it, well then, because I remember, because a few 5 days back I was reading Perumbadavam Sridharan's Oru Sankirtanam Pole. And see, that book is so magical that I started reading at 9 o'clock at night, but I couldn't keep it down. It was so powerful. And I see, J.K. Rowling has once said that magical things can happen when you read a good book, a wonderful book. And it's just like that. You feel as if you're in a magical world. So I couldn't keep that book down. I went on reading. I finished it before I went to bed. Because once you are caught up with such a page turner, with such a powerful book, you will not feel, what do I say? You will not feel peace. You will not at all feel peaceful without finishing that book. So you have to go beyond the textbooks. As we school children, I know you have lots of work at school, we have lots of things to study, but beyond that, find some time to read. And if you are like, we all say, what's your hobby? People say my hobby is reading, but there's something to think about. That is reading actually a hobby? If somebody asks you, will you say brushing is my hobby or bathing is my hobby? No, we don't. Just like bathing and brushing and having food, reading is one of the basic essentials of life. It's not only just a hobby. In order to become a person, in order to identify ourselves, to discover ourselves, to be a true individual, reading is a very important component, just like bathing and brushing and having food, all the regular things that we do in our life. So, if you are a good reader, if a person asks you, okay, which book are you reading now? You shouldn't think and say, oh, I think I read this book 2 months back. It's not like that. You should always have a book that you are currently reading, a book that you keep with you live. If somebody asks you, which book are you reading now, you should have an answer. You should have an answer that now I'm reading this book. It's not that in the past I read this book. Which book are you reading now? Always, always remember this. Keep a book with you that you are reading constantly, so that, see, we won't feel alone. If you have a good book with you, no matter whoever ignores us, no matter whoever neglects us, a person with a book is never alone in this world. And see, it's not only having a list of favorite books. We all have a list of favorite books. I'll tell you my list of favorite books soon. Uh, but beyond having a list of favorite books, you should also have a list of books that you would love to read in the future. Like you should have a list of books actually, like you which you intend to read in the future. You must be like, okay, I will read this book in the future. I would love to read this book if I get this book. And when you go to the library, or when you go to when somebody asks you which book do you like to read, you should always have a list of books which you would love to read. You have not yet read it, but you would love to read it in the future. Then we there are some very famous books that we should never miss reading them, because for example, award winning books, even the Kerala Sahitya Academy or the Kendra Sahitya Academy Award, the Pulitzer Prize, Booker Prize, Nobel Prize for Literature. So those books which have won these prizes, always keep them high on your priority, that okay, I should read these books. Maybe you will not find the book soon, because soon after the book wins the Nobel Prize, might be you'll not be able to read it as soon as the book wins the Nobel Prize. But definitely over time you might find an opportunity to lay your hands upon that book. And each book that you hold in your hand is like a soul that you are holding in your hand. Because each book is not only a book, any article for that matter, anything that you read is just like a life, a soul of a person that you're holding in your hand. And a good book, it not only talks to you, it not only communicates to you, a good book also listens to you. Now, how does a good book listen to us? Because we'll be able to identify with many of the characters, many of the situations, or these might be the situations that we ourselves have faced in our lives, or we ourselves might be going to face in our lives in the future. Especially if when you read autobiographies, to name a few, you have Mahatma Gandhi's The Story of My Experiments with Truth. That's very simple. Anybody can understand it. Don't think that, oh, it's so difficult to understand, the language is so complicated. No, it's very simple. Or else you can find a Malayalam translation and read. So that is a very important autobiography. Then in Nehru's autobiography, that is important. It's called the autobiography. Then you have, we have all read Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam's Wings of Fire, and Helen Keller's The Story of My Life. Hmm? Not even autobiographies, going beyond that, you have personal experiences. For example, there's a personal experience of a girl from Africa called Ayan Hirsi Ali. It's called The Infidel. That's her personal experiences, the trauma that she has gone through, how she has survived all of these uh, troubles, how she has overcome all of these hurdles in life to emerge as a very successful woman. The most recent autobiography I read was Michelle Obama's Becoming. That's so inspiring. So like that, you have where you learn that even though Michelle Obama, we all look upon her as the president's wife, the first lady of USA. Hello, sir. Can I continue? Okay, okay. So even if you look at her, that Michelle Obama is like the first lady of USA, somebody very great. But actually, when you read that book, you identify a lot with her. You begin to look at her like your own mother, like your own sister, like your own friend. We realize that within that personality, there is a very ordinary woman who thinks like us, who feels exactly like we feel. It's not that she's so great, or she's something inaccessible. It's not like that. Within every person there is an us, or we get to identify ourselves in every author, in every character. At least in a few aspects we do get to identify. So that is what. And then coming to further levels of reading, of course, I went beyond the children's library, gradually growing, reading Ruskin Bond. Then R.K. Narayan became my favorite author. We've all heard about his Malgudi days, and Malgudi days, then BA, Waiting for the Mahatma. Like, I do not want to give you a list of books because that might become quite boring, I know. Rather than that, try to find out which is your area of interest. As far as I am concerned, my area of interest is I love reading Indian English fiction. Indian English literature means the literature that is written by Indians in English language. We have Shashi Tharoor, Anita Nair, Anita Desai, her daughter Kiran Desai, Arvinda Adiga. All these are famous personalities, famous authors of Indian English literature. That is, those Indians writing in English. Okay, then we have lots of contemporary writers, contemporary fiction. So, how do you know about new books that come up, or how do you know about good books? Of course, your friends and teachers can help in that. Like, if you, I get to know about most of the popular books or most of the favorite books by talking with my friends, because when my friends come and tell me, hey, I've read this book is so great, okay, I get to understand, oh, there is this book, so next time when I go to library, I'll have to read this book. Sometimes teachers tell you, you have to read this book, this is a very interesting book. So when they tell you, accept it, and then when you go to the library next time, or when you get an opportunity to read that book, please go ahead and read that book. So your friends, teachers, all of them can help you with what are some of the great books. Then one of another, like, all these are books that we all know, like Paulo Coelho's Alchemist. We all love that book. It's full of inspiration, people say. Not just people say, it's, again, it's a very interesting book. The Alchemist, that's one of my favorites. There are actually many books, and at present, if you ask me which book I'm reading, it's actually not a book, it's a collection of letters. It's a collection of letters written by uh, uh, Franz Kafka to Felice. So even letters you can read. You might have heard of the letters written by Jawaharlal Nehru to his daughter Indira Gandhi while he was in prison. So that's letters written by a father to a daughter. Okay, so even letters, there is no limits to reading. You can read almost anything. Even letters have become a part of reading these days. Then coming to yeah, another section is translations. See, uh, it's not just that we read only English works. It's not like that. We can read works from other languages, other cultures, from Germany, from Russia, France, even Latin American countries, Africa, the other Asian countries. So when you read books from different cultures, when you read them in translations, what's the advantage? You get to know about how people think or how people live in different cultures, in different societies. You are traveling actually. When you read a book from a different location, you travel across space, you travel across time, you travel across all sorts of possible barriers. It's just like you sit in a place with a book very comfortably. You're sitting in a chair or in a sofa, but your mind might be traveling across distances. Okay, so that is so. Coming to Malayalam, for beginners, what sort of books can you read from Malayalam? MT is definitely from seventh, even children from seventh, eighth, ninth, you can all understand MT. He writes in a very simple language. If you know how to read Malayalam, then of course you can read MT, you can read Tagari. The language is very simple, things that we ourselves know, but written in a very beautiful way. So you can start reading Vaikom Muhammad Bashir, or you can start reading the works by T. Padmanabhan's short stories. So what you have to do is find your area of interest. I am telling you those short story writers and novelists from Malayalam that I am familiar with. There might be a lot of poets, there might be a lot of other writers of travelogues, etc., that I am not yet familiar with. It will take time. See, it's a continuous process. There might be so many great authors that I am not yet aware of, that whose name even I don't know of. So what you have to do is uh, you have to take that earnest effort, that earnest interest, so that you explore more, so that you get to know who are the new authors, what are the emerging trends in books, etc. Then suppose you feel quite demotivated, suppose you feel a bit lazy, or you feel especially it's lockdown times, we are all caught up at homes. We don't feel what's the point of living, or what's the point of life, or what's the meaning of this existence. Definitely reading can help you come out of all this personal crisis. uh, Reading can help you find out your own individuality. It can help you in times of need, in times of crisis, just like a good friend can help you. So uh, I think that is what I intended on saying. And what else? What else do you want me to talk about? Like, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer. Hello? If you have any sorts of questions, any sorts of uh, like doubts or anything, I'll try to talk to you. Come on, I'd love to hear from you. Ask something, please. Hello? Yes. Sorry? Could you please repeat your question once more? First book I remember reading. First book I remember reading, it must be obviously Kalikudka and Balarama. That's magazines, of course. Speaking of a hardcore book that I remember reading, yeah, we babysitters. When I was in fifth and all, like that was when libraries became a little more open because still fourth and all, we have library there at school, but you don't have the freedom to go to the shelf and pick up the book that you like because might be that children would spoil books, might be because of that fear, but still, but coming to fifth and all, I had a little bit more freedom. So I remember going to the Babysitters Club. That's a series of fiction. You might have heard of it. Uh, there's a series of books just like Goosebumps series. So Goosebumps series and Babysitter series. I started reading with that. Yeah, that's it. But see, I told you it's a highly personalized choice. Just because I started reading babysitters doesn't mean all of the children starts reading with babysitters. And just because, there are different genres. You might be interested in reading science books, even geography books, even you have lots of such lot of varieties, even travelogues. So lots of variety in reading. So try to expand the scope of reading and don't just stay stuck or don't just stay fixed to one particular area, even though it is of interest to you, but you will only identify your areas of interest, your other areas of interest, when you start diversifying, when you start exploring the other areas. And the books that you read when you are young or when you are small children, when you are young, these are the books that are going to stay with you forever. It will stay in your memory forever. Yes. Okay. If it's current affairs magazines to get to know about what's happening or the daily news events, then you can definitely go for The Week or India Today. If you want to go for environmental issues, like you like get to know about environment, ecology, all these things, Down to Earth is a very good magazine. Then in Malayalam, as I told, you have Madhurbhumi Azhapadipu. That is more into a little bit of analytical reading, more of you get to know about literary subjects there as well. So Madhurbhumi Azhapadipu. Then of course you have lots of e-magazines available online. You have Indian Ruminations. That's one magazine I follow. So you've nowadays it's more into e-magazines rather than having the traditional print magazines. And for children, we have the children's magazine, we have Tinkle. Tinkle is a very interesting stuff. Just like we have Balrama in English, we have Tinkle and children's magazine. So, as per small children are concerned, these magazines would, because these are the magazines that I've read as a small child. So, yes. Do I dislike? Okay, I cannot say I dislike, but I am not yet comfortable with science fiction. I'm not yet comfortable with fantasy fiction because it might take time. I might become familiar with that in the future, but as of now, I'm not yet comfortable with it. It's not that I dislike it. I cannot say I dislike it because might be because I've not yet read so much of it, might be because my disposition is not so much oriented towards it. It might take some time so that I become familiar with it. Okay, thank you, Nivedita. Yes, Surya. Oh, that's a good author. Could you repeat that once again? No, I've not even heard that author. Thank you so much. Next time I go into the library, I'd find it. Okay. Yes. No, I only know English and Malayalam. So most of my reading is focused on English books, and of course, I read books written in French. For example, Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. That's a very famous book, but that's actually written in French, but I read it in English translation. Then another book is Tolstoy. Tolstoy's most of his works were written in Russian, but I read it in English translation. A recent book of Tolstoy I read was Anna Karenina. Very wonderful book. Might be it take some time as you grow. Maybe after you come out of school and all, when you read Anna Karenina, you might be able to understand it better. Okay, that is the thing with foreign language authors like Dostoevsky. If you read it now, because when I read Dostoevsky's works in 8th standard, I did not understand anything. Believe me, I did not understand anything. But now when I read it, no, over the years, I am able to understand it. So don't be disappointed that, oh, I'm not able to understand this book. It doesn't mean that I cannot read. It's not like that. It's just because it will take some time for you till you start liking that author or that style of writing. It takes some more time for you to grow up. That's the thing. I saw a question in the chat. What was that about? When did you read Malayalam based story? Oh, Malayalam based story, not Malayalam based story, Malayalam story. When I read the first Malayalam, of course we all read Malayalam stories at school, right? So coming to the Malayalam story, the most yeah, ഒരു കുടയും കുഞ്ഞു പെങ്ങളും by മുട്ടത്ത് വർക്കി. You've heard of it? A very touching, very, 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 very interesting, very touching. You know, it made me cry. It made me really cry. I was only a seventh standard child then, but after reading it, I cried. So you can imagine how powerful it was. I got that from children's library itself, Oru Kudayum Kunju Pengalum. That is the first Malayalam novel I remember reading. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. My opinion, personally, I'm a person who prefers reading traditional, conventional, hard-bound book that I get in my hand. It's just like, just imagine, see, a book in this traditional form that you hold in your hand can never be a substitute for the Kindle edition or the e-book or the thing that you scroll on the screen. because the feel of having a book in your hand, having to touch the pages, turning the pages, feeling it in your hand, that gives a different feel. Like we say, it's of another level of a feel rather than reading on the screen. Screen reading, of course, it has limitations. I personally don't read so much on the screen. First of all, I've got this heavy specs now. I do not want to add on to this because it's not very comfortable reading on the screen. It makes my eyes watery and stuff. But still, the times now. I told you the biggest thing that I missed this year is going to libraries. Even the college library was not accessible, so I had to do much reading on the screen this year. Beyond that, like I had to either buy books or I had to reread books that I have already read. It's nothing wrong with rereading books, which says like when you read a book for the first time, it's like you're meeting a friend. When you reread it, it's like you are meeting an old friend, and you're meeting an old friend, and so that it's just like that, like you're meeting an old friend. When you reread a book, you yourself will be so much surprised. How much have I forgotten from the first reading? Because after the first reading, when you read it years later, it's just like reading something altogether new, especially if you have forgotten a lot of those things. And reading a book when you are small and reading a book after 10 or maybe 5 to 10 years, again that differs, because by then your perspectives would have changed, you yourself as a person would have changed. The way you understand a book 5 years back and the way you understand a book 5 years later, the same book, but the way you interpret it is different. So, uh, of course, as now you cannot go to libraries, you cannot pick up books. So what do? There's no other option. We definitely have to read on the screen. But I think reading on Kindle is definitely more comfortable. I've had friends telling me that reading on Kindle is not so harmful than the other reading materials. But like personally, I prefer the hardbound book that I can hold in my hand. It's just like, imagine if all this pandemic was not there, I could have been really with you there at school. I could have been really been able to see you all there. That gives me more excitement than seeing you all on this virtual rectangular screen. Now, that's just the difference between reading on screen and reading a book in the actual form in hand. It's just like meeting you all in person, meeting you all in a very, what do you say, directly rather than virtually. But still, we have to move forward. We cannot wait that let the COVID pandemic get over and then we'll start reading. No, we cannot wait for that. We do not have time to waste for that because life is very short. Yes, Surya. Yeah, of course. That's what I told you. Like, reading is highly personalized. I might feel traditional book is better. Surya might feel ebooks are better. So that depends on what sort of a disposition you have towards reading. And of course, you get to read greater number of books online these days than the ones available in libraries. In libraries, the thing is, sometimes famous books might have only one copy, the other copies might all be damaged, so you have to reserve the book and you have to wait. You have to wait even for sometimes you have to wait for months till that book becomes available again. And when that books become available, unfortunately you might be having your exams at school or exams at college, you might not be able to go and pick up that book. With libraries there is this thing of book shortage might be there, and all books might not be available in library. So in those situations, of course, Kindle in e-readers, all this, the PDFs are definitely helpful. Yes, Vinaya. Did you mean Alchemist? Okay. The Alchemist. Yes, it's definitely a book that can change your life. Change your life in the sense, it's not an overnight change. It's not like, okay, one fine morning I decide to read Alchemist and then I get changed the next day. No, but it changes the way you begin to look at things, the way you begin to understand things. Uh, you become more optimistic. People around might tell you, hey, this is not possible, or why are you wasting your time doing this? But but after reading The Alchemist, it gives you hope, it gives you optimism that even if I work, even if all the other people are not supporting me now, I will be able to achieve that aim or achieve that goal if I go forward. That's what Santiago does in the story, right? uh, Even though he faces a lot of troubles on the way, when he goes ahead, he makes it. He reaches the goal actually, and rather than that's what we all go searching for many things, but we do not realize that the thing that we are searching for is very much near us, or it's very much in our doorstep itself. What happens in The Alchemist? For those of you who have not read it, I just tell you, The Alchemist, there's a boy called Santiago, and then he goes in search of a treasure. He sees a dream in which he gets a sort of a intuition, an intuitionary feeling that there's a treasure in Egypt and he'll have to go and find it. So he goes looking for that treasure. He's a shepherd boy, okay? He's very poor. He's left his home, etc., and then he sleeps. You cannot say he lives because he doesn't have a permanent house or anything like that. He moves with his flocks from place to place, and he comes to a very shabby place, a very dilapidated church structure, and that is, it's inside the dilapidated church monastery that he sleeps every day, every night. So it's while sleeping there that he has the sudden revelatory dream that a treasure is awaiting him at Egypt, and he decides to go in quest of this treasure. So finally, he goes through a lot of troubles, lot of problems on the way. He meets many people. He even meets a form of god called Melchizedek. He meets even a incarnation of God, who, and it's basically about a lot of spirituality. So there are lots of spiritual guidances that help him and guide him along the way. So finally, when he reaches Egypt, he realizes that the treasure that he was searching for was there under the root of the tree that he used to sleep. That he used to see. He used to sleep on upon a tree which was there in that dilapidated church. Under the root of the tree that treasure is hidden means the thing that he went searching for was actually there at the place where he used to sleep every day, but he traveled so much in search of this treasure. But ultimately he comes back to this place where he used to sleep with his sheep, and then he finds the treasure there. But the lesson we learn from that is more about a spiritual journey. It's a journey of self discovery. It's about discovering himself. If Santiago had not gone to Egypt, he would never have recognized his talents, he would never have recognized himself. But it's only after he made that journey that he himself became fit enough to discover that treasure. So that's about, so it's more of a spiritual growth that you find in Alchemist. So those of you who have not read it, do go and read it. It's very interesting. You have lots of episodic stories in between, lots of inspiring stories. It just reads like a fairy tale, just like all the little fairy tales that we have read. And it's very nice. So do read it. Yes.